Hello, it's July 21st, 2025. Here we are on the summit of Mount Khuiten, the highest point in Mongolia. Mount Khuiten stands at 14,350 feet and is located in the northwest corner of the country, right on the border of Russia and China. This was really meant to be the highlight of our expedition through Mongolia, is reaching this summit, but come to find out all the adventures that we had actually getting here were just as exciting. You know, the planes, the camels, the off-road jeeps, and the trekking in, and all the cultural experiences were equally as exciting, which we'll go through in this short video. So our adventure started here in the city of Ulaanbaatar, which is the capital of Mongolia. Very modern city, population of about 1.7 million people, located on the western side of the country. As I got here, though, one of the challenges that I had is that half of my luggage was lost. I was using the air tags from Apple, and I could see that one of my bags was not going to make it. And as this was a climbing expedition, it was a little bit stressful, as literally half of my climbing gear actually never ended up making it. So luckily my boots arrived in the one bag that I did have, but a lot of my gear did not end up arriving, and so I had to borrow from fellow climbers, and luckily there was a North Face store here where I could buy some gear. So again, the trek started out with quite the adventure when you're going on one of these things, and one of your worst nightmares is to land here, and especially on a climbing expedition, and not have half of your gear arrive. But it all ended up working out. I was able to piece together enough gear to carry on with the rest of the trip. So when we arrived, it was the Naadam Festival, and this is a large festival that carries out through the entire country of Mongolia during the summer season. It's really like a month-long event in the month of July, and it really encompasses the three sports that are the most popular in Mongolia, those being archery, horseback riding, and wrestling. And so again, all the different villages throughout Mongolia have festivals and different events throughout the year. The one in Ulaanbaatar being the capital, is the most extravagant and colorful. So we were able to attend that, and see some of the events. Here's, the horseback riding and the horse racing that they do there, which is again one of the events is usually done by young children. He's probably 7, 8 years old, and it's not like they're going around a track. They're riding cross country from village to village, which we got to experience. So it was rather amazing seeing these little kids, and the horsemanship that they exhibited during these races. One thing of note is there are actually more horses than people. Population of Mongolia is 3.5 million. There are more horses than people in Mongolia. So it's a very horse-centric culture. Riding is just, everybody has a horse, and it's just, part of their culture in the country. So here's some more of the archery, which is another, again, one of the events that they have, and then the various parades that they have. This is, a traditional Mongolian procession that goes through, and some of this is to represent the Genghis Khan, which I'll talk about here in a second. More on the Naadam Festival. This is us, one of the various temples in the country getting our blessing. Again, it's a Buddhist country, and so we were able to see some of the various temples that we were there during our time in Ulaanbaatar. Eagle hunting is another activity within Mongolia. There was actually a National Geographic documentary on the Mongolian eagle hunters. So they actually go up in the mountains and take these eagles as hatchlings, and they raise them to be hunters. It probably takes 2 or 3 years to be a hunter. So you can see them throughout the various spots. So this is one of our climbing friends, Einar, getting an experience here to actually hold on to the eagle. Here we are at a memorial to Genghis Khan, the famous Mongolian warrior that I'm sure everybody's heard about. Amazing story. There was a story on Netflix about him that I watched before I went on the trip. But just to put it in perspective, under his leadership, they conquered roughly 17% of all the land in the entire world through his armies. They were amazing warriors, amazing horsemen, and amazing archers. And so they really had a very sophisticated military strategy that allowed them to go and conquer that vast amount of land. And hence you see the horse, and that's, again, as I mentioned earlier, why the horsemanship there is so part of their society, and why there are so many horses there. It's really from the historical culture of Genghis Khan. But again, there's memorials to him throughout the country. The airport is the Genghis Khan Airport. This Buddhist statue is in the Gandam Monastery. It's actually the largest indoor Buddhist statue anywhere in the world. It stands 87 feet high. It was originally constructed in 1911, and it's gilded in gold. It was destroyed during the Soviet occupation, but rebuilt in 1990 when Mongolia became a free country. Just a little bit more history on Mongolia. Mongolia has had numerous occupations, both by the Chinese, but also by the Russians. So it's a heavily Russian influence, and it regained its independence in 1990. The country overall has 3.5 million people, with a million of those being nomads throughout the countryside. So after our time at Ulaanbaatar, we hopped on a Mongolian airline flight about 3 hours west to the town of Ölgii, where we were going to begin our adventure cross country to get to our camp where we were going to do our climbing. We hopped in these jeeps Land Cruisers, and proceeded out across cross country. It was an amazing experience. I was thinking of like Mad Max, the Mad Max movie. There really weren't any roads, and we were just going cross country through this vast steppe land. I mean, there's really not a lot of trees in Mongolia, almost none. So it's this vast, they call it steppe prairie land, where it just goes on for miles and miles and miles. It's really an amazing, geographic experience. You just feel really small out there. A couple more things about Mongolia is that the climate there is really harsh. The temperature can go down from minus 40 degrees to probably 85 degrees, which you see in the southern part. The Gobi Desert really expands a lot of the southern part of Mongolia. And it's not a desert as you would think of it. It's more of a hard clay pack, so it's not really so much sand. We didn't make it down there. But again, very extreme climate, very remote, also very sunny. It gets 250 days of sun a year, and this was pretty much the weather we had really a lot of the trip. So the temperatures again were very pleasant, albeit we were there in July. So again, these are some of the vistas that we could see. You can see some of the snow on top of the peaks as we were beginning to get closer. We did happen to stop at a couple of little villages on the way in to get gas because this was about a 10-hour Jeep ride across country. So this was the one little town we were able to stop at and and grab some gas. They made a little picnic for us on the back. And that vehicle in the back you see, that's a little Russian van. That's called a bread box. I forgot the exact name of it here in Russian, but it's pretty common throughout there. It's a four-wheel drive vehicle, and they drive a lot of those through there, through the back countryside. But again, it's just, you can see how dirty the Jeep is now, compared to where it was a few hours earlier when we started. And this is me getting a few Z's. It was still a bit jet lagged after this amount of time, so we take some time to get some rest. So here we are after about our 10-hour cross-country Jeep ride at the entrance to the Altai Mountain National Park. And so there's a little settlement here. We're kind of unloading our bags from our Jeeps, and you can see in the back left over there where the camels are, and those are that we're going to load our gear on, that we're going to use to trek to base camp where we're going to climb the next day. So you can also see in the far right of the gers, and these are where the nomadic people live that are, again, about 1 million of the folks in Mongolia are nomads, and they live in these gers that they can actually collapse those. So they move them up into the mountains in the summertime like this, but they'll move them down more in the lower area in the valleys. And really it's to find the best grazing land for their herds. It's very much a herding culture where they're herding yaks and goats and sheep. And so again, they just follow the seasons of the year and move their gers to where the best pasture lands are, for their herds. This is us grabbing a bite to eat at the ger you saw in the previous picture in the background. You can see very ornately, decorated on the inside, very beautiful, and we really enjoyed our time there. So this is us. The next morning we're off and we're beginning our trek up to to base camp, where we're going to again begin our climbing in the next couple of days. So you can just see the wide open vastness of this area. There aren't a lot of trees, and just the horizon just seems to go on forever. These are our camels that carried a lot of our gear. This allowed us to only have to carry 10, 15 pound packs on the way in, as the camels bore the brunt of the load, hauling up our gear to the base camp area from the gate that we came from. And this is us at the base camp. So it's our tent. We're having a community dinner there, and the food was actually really good. Very meat-based culture. So you're eating a lot of beef or sheep or goat during that, and again along with some vegetables. But again, you can see we're all bundled up. It was pretty chilly there. On the far left there are two guides, Gangaba and Baku, and along with our American guide Vern on the left-hand side there. So again, good times. We had a lot, enjoyed each other's company. These were many hours were spent in the tent eating and laughing and enjoying each other's company on this adventure that we were on. And then this is what it looks like from the outside. This was the base camp. Those are the mountains that we're going to climb in the background. You can see that they're snow covered, and the one on the right is Mount Melchin, that one that has the sheer kind of gravel face or scree face, and then there's the white snow on the right side. You really can't see Mount Khuiten. It's kind of tucked in behind there, but this is, again, we're going to begin our climbing adventure, and that's actually in a different video that I'll put forth on the actual climbing part of the expedition. So on the way back out, we ended up stopping at another Naadam Festival. This was more of a local one, and you can see the archery. It's not, this is a small local village, on the way in that we stopped at to witness some of the festival and the archery. The bows are actually really pretty primitive. You don't see any compound bows here. These are bows that they probably used, maybe a little bit better, but back in the 1100s with Genghis Khan, they keep to the traditional values. And again, the archery is a huge sport there. And you can see what it is it's not like they're going at a target. They're actually going to hit these little balls, and they want to move the balls back, and they have to hit the balls, and they have to move all those balls back as part of the competition. So you can see, the accuracy was really pretty amazing from what these are pretty primitive bows compared to these compound bows you see now. What they're able to do was very remarkable. You watched the previous video where I got injured on the climb. I fell and broke the skin on my elbow, which got pretty severely infected. So this, I have a poultice on it trying to suck out the infection. And I'm smiling here, but I'm actually in a fair amount of pain, a little bit worried. We were able to satellite phone in my doctor, and he told me I had to get to a hospital and get some IV antibiotics quickly, or I could really risk losing my arm. So we went to the hospital. This is the hospital we came to, and I went in and tried to check in. I decided that I really didn't want them sticking a needle in my arm. I was a little bit nervous about that, and we happened to find some antibiotics that we were on, so I think it wasn't getting any worse. So I figured I would wait until we got back to Ulaanbaatar, where there was a larger, more modern hospital that had them take a look at it. And as part of that adventure, I really didn't get treated there either, but I got another dose of antibiotics and waited until I got home back here in the States to go to the ER when I got back here. And luckily it all worked out well, but I was a little bit nervous about, these are all Soviet era hospitals here. This is from probably the 1950s. So a little bit nervous about getting treatment there. And so a lesson learned when you're on these international venues, you need to be pretty self-sufficient and take the appropriate medication where you can, because oftentimes the medical facilities are not going to be what we're used to here in the West. And on the way out, we stopped at one of our guides' uncle's house. You can just see again how ornately decorated they are, all the tapestries that are woven, primarily the women in the culture, and they're really beautiful. And Yubako's uncle also was an eagle hunter, and so we were able to, he put on his traditional garb, and we were able to see his eagle that he actually kept out in the pen behind his ger. Again, he's a herder as well, and they kind of go in communities. They'll have several gers together, and they all kind of share. They share everything together. They share the pasture land, and again, nobody owns the land here. You can set up a ger anywhere. And so, but they all work together to make sure that they don't, wherever they end up staying for that period of time, they don't overgraze the land. So it's a very interesting culture, but again, that's an eagle that he got 2 years ago. So that eagle he has been training, and he's was going to take it hunting, this fall on its first hunting expedition, where they go out and hunt for marmots and other small rodents with that. And you can see there's one of our climbers, Tom, with that eagle. So that's a golden eagle. You can see the wingspan on that's a 2-year-old eagle. It's not even quite fully grown yet. And then near the end of the trip, we had the pleasure of our guide Baku had a friend who was a fellow doctor. That's the individual there on the right in the ornate robe. And we actually went to his house to have dinner. They cooked us a meal at their house. So it was really quite the festivities. And it was a 5-finger meal. So it's a meat and a noodle culture. And so you basically reach in with your hands. I show that in another video, and eat the meal. On a small plate, but everybody kind of reaches in. So it's again called a 5-finger meal. And it's a Kazakhstan. There's a lot of, in this part, we were on the western side of Mongolia, and so there's a highly influenced by the Kazakhstan. So they were actually Kazakhstan. So this would be a traditional meal there. And again, so at the end of the meal, the family got up and went and changed into this very festival and ornate, outfits, and did a concert for us. And this was actually, they were actually in a band that toured throughout Asia and singing traditional folk songs. So we're sitting there getting a private concert, with them. And the woman on the right is Arkistan. When she sang, her voice was just totally amazing. I have it in a short video. And come to find out, we were told that she won Mongolian Voice to show the voice here in the United States. Well, they have a Mongolian version of it, and she won Mongolian Voice in 2018, which was just crazy. So we're, again, sitting there in this ger in a small town in western Mongolia, getting serenaded by this Kazakhstan family after we had a traditional 5-finger meal. It was an unbelievable experience that we had, and really, a way to end the trip as we were beginning to head out that next day. So that kind of concludes, the journey, the plains, the trekking, the camels, all the different cultural things we saw. Just a fantastic experience that allowed us to actually climb. This is actually Mount Khuiten from the base camp, and the initial picture was from the summit. So if you like this, you want to see the actual climbing part of the adventure, just click on the other video. Thanks for following along. Bye-bye.